I think maybe we need to move back and forth between the documents, and hopefully that will give you a little more of the why as we walk through it. So if we start with the first page of the stapled packet, and at the top of it, it says recommended per pupil foundation calculation. So the first column on your matrix is the first page here of the stapled packet. And this is the building, the per pupil foundation amount, the foundation being the primary funding formula for state education aid. And the concept is that dollars that are being provided essentially to educate all students would fit into the foundation amount. And that's where you want to, so that's the concept. And so if starting at the top of the page, the current base, the current per pupil foundation amount for this fiscal year in our formula is $7,244. And then under the additions, the first line are the increased dollars for teacher salaries. This reflects the 10% increase that the commission proposed in order to bring salaries up to competitive with our Massachusetts and New Jersey neighbors and move towards getting towards comparable salaries with other professionals. And it also includes the $60,000 minimum salary that the commission is recommending. So since that's all teachers, and so for all teachers that are essentially general instruction teachers, those dollars are falling in the foundation amount. The next line, and so a lot of these are things that Justin was just talking about. The next line is the cost of the additional collaborative time, the teacher time, the embedded professional development in the school day, the many more teachers that we're talking about having in every school so that teachers are in front of the classroom about 25% less of the time than they are now, and they have the ability to provide individualized instruction, one-on-one, group tutoring, analyzing student data, working with their colleagues in subject matter and grade level. And so that is $1,151, the cost that, so what we've done is we've taken the cost that the commission estimated in order to implement this recommendation, and then through the magic of math, turned it into a per pupil amount. And so that is what that dollar is. And let me also say, this, all of these numbers are starting out in fiscal $20, and then we're inflating them to fiscal 30. And so at the bottom line number is what the amount will be in fiscal 30. So we're building to fiscal 30. This is at full implementation. This does not get into any phase in at this point. This is what will it be in fiscal 30. The principal career ladder is also incorporated into the foundation amount, again, because the principals are in all of the schools. The behavioral health increase, this is the mental health coordinators that were required by the Safe to Learn Act, and that was funded, actually started to be funded under the blueprint in fiscal 20. The other recommendations for increasing school-based mental health and health services are a categorical program that is sitting outside the box in the matrix. The next items relate to policy area 3. The first one is the college and career readiness. So if you recall, what the commission proposed is additional dollars based on two things. One, the students who are ready, college and career ready, and are ready for those post-college and career pathways, including more rigorous CTE programs, and then the students who are not college and career ready by the end of 10th grade and require a different instructional method, not just take the same course over again, but teaching the material differently so that students are able to learn it, and in a lot of cases, more project-based. And so because the dollars, because every student will be either college and career ready or not college and career ready by the end of 10th grade, a portion of that cost can go into the foundation. And that is what this represents, the half of the money that would be for all students, because everybody's going to be either college and career ready or not college and career ready. The next line is the additional career counseling that the commission is recommending. The commission recommended that there be a career counselor in every middle school and high school in the state. Staff has also modified the cost estimate for that a little bit to account for different sizes of schools, which that we know that there are some larger high schools that would need more than one career counselor based on their enrollment. And so that cost has gone up a little bit since what the commission originally recommended. And then on a per student basis, it's $58. Now, let me just say here that the commission recommended that, or recognized that different school systems or counties or jurisdictions might want to implement this career counseling model in different ways. And so the cost is reflective of the equivalent of a career counselor in every middle school and high school. Each jurisdiction programmatically would still need to, within their jurisdiction, however they choose to determine how the dollars are going to be spent, agree on how the dollars are going to be spent. And it could be through the community colleges, it could be through American Job Centers, it could be through career counselors in the middle schools and high schools. Then the last two items are new items that I'm going to ask Justin to explain, that essentially go back to the purpose of the foundation amount and sort of making sure that we're covering costs.
Yeah. So a couple of things that came up during the commission's work were, one, ensuring that there's adequate maintenance and operations funding. And so we took a look at some actual funding and some recommended funding from the adequacy study, and looked at the differential per pupil between what's actually occurring at a per pupil level and what was recommended. And so that $97 per pupil gets us up to, fills that gap between the recommended and what's currently happening. And then the supplies and materials for new teachers, there are a lot of new teachers in the system, which you see up on that cost of collaborative time. And what this estimates is at, I think, $525 per teacher, per new teacher. How much would you need on a per pupil level to ensure that they have their supplies, materials, a computer, things like that? And so it costs $6 additionally on top of the new teachers in order to provide those supplies and materials for that staff.
So, Justin, if you could pause just a second. Senator Carrozza has a question.
Thank you. And Rachel, I appreciate that additional guidance. I'm just going to ask kind of a more general question just to make sure, if I was trying to explain this chart to a parent in Pocomoke, I just want to make sure I understand the categories in the box are wealth equalized, which means that would be based on the current property income wealth formula?
We haven't gotten to that yet, but in terms of the local wealth issues are.
In other words, what's
later,
in the box will be different based on each individual county's wealth formula.
Right.
Whereas the state administered, state categorical, and short-term funding would all be the same for each student, for each school. I just want to make sure I'm explaining it correctly.
Well, it's going to be funded only by the state, the first two columns at least, the state administered and state categorical. They're essentially state programs that the state will fund, and in some cases the state administers the whole program, and in other cases LEAs or private providers.
So the main difference,
them.
if you're saying what's in the box and what's outside of the box, inside the box you're going to have local contribution, outside of the box totally state, and that's how I would explain it.
Yes.
Okay. Just want to make
Exactly.
sure. Okay.
Exactly.
Commissioner Pellegrino.
Thank you. I'm looking at these numbers. There's a lot of costs here for salaries, for increased collaboration time, meaning increased teachers, increase to the existing teacher's salary. And excuse me if I should know this, and we've discussed it. Are fringes a part of this calculation? Because of course those are costs that will increase for the systems.
Yeah, we have fringes in the model, yes.
Okay, great. And the reason I'm asking is this year when we received our concentration of poverty funding, also our mental health coordinator, those were salary only, and those were burdens to our local jurisdictions because we had to find that fringe cost somewhere else in our budget. And I'm a medium-sized district. I was able to find that funding, but I worry about our smaller districts because that can be very costly for them.
Commission Member Wilson.
Just to follow up on Senator Carrozza's question, with the state side, is that also have any kind of factor in terms of by county? In other words, if the state's putting $6 into the whatever category, is it $6 for every student in every county, or is it also based on the different counties, different jurisdictions have different amounts of state dollars coming in per student?
So anything that's wealth equalized will be, the split's going to be within each individual formula it's run, and then there's a determined local contribution versus state contribution. But the calculation amount, if that makes sense. So, for example,
I'm outside the box.
outside the box.
It's the state-run stuff. Is each category there that the state is funding something, is it the same amount per student in every county, or is it vary by county?
I think it would be the same, depending, but not everything is going to be a per pupil amount. There are just different formulas. So some of this is about teacher prep, some of it's about students, and so it will be the same amount of funding for every county, depending on what that formula looks like. The unit of analysis within the formula, because not everything's a per pupil on that right side.
Okay.
I think what he was asking, if I'm correct, is are those dollars wealth equalized as they go to the jurisdiction? Okay.
Same amount. Yep.
Commissioner Showalter.
Thank you, Chairman Kirwan. Just a quick comment. Is it possible as we go forward and as we try to communicate these ideas to our different stakeholders, if DLS can make some charts that might be a little more accessible for the public? Just something to throw out there. I know you don't have anything to do. just an idea.
We're trying to make this accessible. This is pretty complicated. If you have ideas about how it could be more accessible, we are all ears.
Okay. We will communicate about that.
Okay.
All right. Thank you.
Let me just go back to Commissioner Pellegrino's question, and I was conferring over here because when we calculated the cost of the mental health coordinator and the community school coordinator and the healthcare practitioner, that included fringe benefits. Let me just be clear. What the commission staff calculated as those amounts included fringe benefits. You might have been told that it did not include fringe benefits, but I'm saying the cost calculation, the amount, the $125,000 for community school coordinator, that includes fringe benefits.
Maybe we need clarification.
Right.
Direction we've gotten, because the direction we've been given to the local school systems is that we cannot charge fringes to those restricted projects.
Okay, well, that is incorrect. So I can also talk to Amelie about this, but so the cost, that the dollars that were provided for the community school coordinator and for the mental health coordinator through the blueprint included fringe benefits.
Sure it did, yeah.
Right, but apparently the direction that they've gotten from MSDE is that they cannot charge fringe benefits.
We'll double check.
Yeah, so we need to follow up.
Text her and
Yep, we'll
maybe
follow up
before-
on that.
Before we leave today.
Okay, we'll follow up on that. Okay. Who else? Commissioner Schaefer.
Is there? Oh, yes, Commissioner Schaefer.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So while we're on that, those lines, could you just clarify for me, when I'm looking at the matrix, under policy area 4B, so there will be foundation money appropriated for that, but it's also over here in state categorical, and so what's specifically covered by the state dollars?
That is the expansion of the school-based health centers.
Okay.
And the school-based health centers, it's a program that is jointly administered by MSDE and the Department of Health.
Okay, and expansion meaning that provides staff or services or whatever?
The commission recommended essentially fully funding the original, inflation-adjusted, the original goal for the program. I think it's an increase of $12 million or so for the program.
Okay.
Don't quote me on that. Maybe somebody will check my number.
Thank you.
Commissioner Hedelman.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Two hopefully easy questions. One, under pre-K expansion, why isn't that in the base? Why isn't pre-K in the base?
So pre-K, and we will get, it is on page, the last page, page 6 of the stapled packet. And essentially, it's because of, before lunch, we talked about the enrollment count and that the full-time equivalent student count is going to remain K-12 under the Workgroup's proposal, and the pre-K students will be counted separately, and they will be funded out of a separate formula, at least during the implementation period. Once we get to full implementation, they can probably be rolled together, but really the issue is that the FTE count is used not just for the input of enrollment, but to calculate wealth per pupil. And wealth per pupil drives all of the wealth equalization programs within the box. And so since different jurisdictions are already implementing pre-K, full day pre-K, at different rates, if we include those enrollment counts in the FTE count, it will vastly affect the year-to-year shifts in wealth between jurisdictions. It's not that the pre-K formula won't be wealth equalized. It will be wealth equalized, just as the foundation program. It just will be a separate program, and in part because pre-K is actually more expensive than K-12 students, the per student amount is higher than what the foundation amount would be.
I'm not sure I understood all of that, except to this extent. The counting them for FTE may be a separate matter than actually including the cost in the base, which would increase the base. And it seems to me that the concept of the base is for all students, and pre-K students are all students.
So pre-K, think of pre-K more like special ed or compensatory education or one of the other formulas with a weight. So essentially, the pre-K formula will be the foundation amount plus an additional amount, because the per pupil cost for the cost of quality for pre-K, which is what the commission is recommending, is significantly higher than the base. So it's just like Comp Ed has a weight and EL has a weight. The pre-K formula is the weight that is the additional dollars, the more expensive cost for pre-K.
Well, I would think, not sure, that the weights would apply to the pre-K kids, if they're English language learners, if they're special ed. So it means less money if they're in a separate category than they're in the base. And I don't understand the logic to that.
Right. So pre-K students who are eligible for special education services will be in the special education count, which is a separate, that's not the FTE count, it's a separate count. FTE is only for the foundation and wealth per pupil. is
I
coming.
appreciate that. Maybe I just disagree. That's all. And it just
Well,
seems to me.
I don't think you disagree. I just think it's maybe it's an understanding issue.
It matters if it's in the base, but you get more higher numbers if it's in the base.
No.
Oh, okay, then I
I
accept
think it's
you
just
for
an
that.
understanding. Yeah.
Okay, I'll accept your word for it. I don't.
Yeah. So,
Okay, thank you. If that's true,
Okay.
fine, thank you.
yes.
Let's continue.
All right, so finish rounding out the foundation per pupil amount. There's a cost savings heading, and so the commission also recognized that as we do things differently, there are some costs that will be reduced as a result of this additional spending and different spending. And so the two pieces that affect the foundation amount is the additional dollars that are spent for professional development every year, essentially out of the administrative costs of the school systems, because we're now going to be embedding that in the school day and not these one day here, one day there, professional development type activities. And the other piece is, and I can't remember, I think it was Senator Carrozza, but I might have that wrong, talking about autonomy for teachers. Oh, no, I think it was Senator Bates. But anyway, whoever brought it up. So part of the concept of the commission's recommendations is that over time, as we have well-prepared teachers and that are treated as professionals and paid as professionals, there will be more autonomy at the school level and less sort of central and mid-level administrative costs, because the schools are going to have more autonomy. They're going to take on more of the decision-making that is done in many cases now at the central office. And so the commission accounted for some savings related to that at full implementation, so in 10 years, and that is also reflected here. And so that gives us a new per pupil foundation amount of $9,150 compared to the current spending of $72.44. So a little less than $2,000 more per pupil in today's dollars. And then when you adjust that for inflation, the new base in fiscal 2030 is going to be $11,326. Of course, this is based on our projections of inflation, which are around less than 2.5% a year, between 2 and 2.5% a year. So that's the foundation. Moving on.
Commissioner Heddleman.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I realize, it's probably water under the bridge, but I just want to note that I believe that we accepted as the base for the base, the current base, and we did not fully consider or adopt other recommendations of APA for the base. And the biggest one of those was class size. I realize people have different views about class size, but it seems to me that the base should, based on evidence-based principles, should include a reduction in class size. I just want to sort of note that for the record, so to speak.
So noted.
So the next page in the packet are the, unfortunately, they're not in quite the same order as the matrix. So skipping over special education for this moment. The next page of your packet, stapled packet, is compensatory education and English learners. And I'm going to ask Justin to go over this.
Okay. So if we look at the Excel document, one of the things that we determined within policy area 4 is that, actually, let's go back to the other, sorry, is that the total funding for comp ed and English learners were set by in the policy area. So we are looking at the total amount of resource that we wanted to ensure students would have within comp ed and English learners. And so as the base changed, that changes the per pupil amount needed for comp ed and English learner. And so just that top line, the additional funding really is, again, still targeted towards what the commission agreed on, which was a total amount of funding for each of these categories. What is then added on top of that is the salary increase associated with these two areas. You'll see it's a little bit more on a per comp ed student level than it is for English learners, and that's very much in part because there are just less English language teachers in the system today than what we will see over time. And so that's part of the distribution of additional salary. And so the new compensatory education dollar amount per student, once you add in the salary increase, is $6,739. That produces a weight of 0.74 on the base that we looked at on the prior page of 9,150. The English learner additional amount per pupil is 7,931, which is a weight of 0.87, again on that base of 9,150. And then you can see that inflated to the FY30 dollars, around 8,350 for comp ed and around $9,800 for English learners. Okay.
Special education?
Yep. So special education, as you'll remember, is a little different than the other calculations that we have. This is about a placeholder weight that was derived looking at current total special education expenditures in the state and creating a per pupil figure. So that placeholder weight, again, looking at current funding, is $13,619, which is on the $9,150 base is a weight of almost 1.5. When you inflate that out to the FY30 dollars, it's $16,856 per student. And so again, that is a placeholder weight based on what is currently being spent in total for special education kids at a per pupil level.
And you might explain why it's placeholder.
So the placeholder part of that is that there is a statewide study being undertaken currently to look at the costs and funding for special education. I believe that the report is coming out in December. The final report is coming out in December. That should have some recommendations on what a funding structure and a level of funding might be for special education students.
Page is concentration of poverty, which I'm also going to ask Justin to explain.
This is Rachel's favorite piece because there's a algebraic line in it. So if we look in policy area 4, under 4A, this is another area where there is a split between where the funding is coming from. And so what you see on this page falls under the concentration of poverty formula, which is inside the box. And then, what the state categorical, which is the people. So if we go back to the Excel doc, I guess they're probably both Excel documents. The state categorical is the top part of this page. And so the state is going to be funding these two positions for any school that has over 55% concentration of poverty. And again, state funded, it's already starting to be rolled out at at a higher concentration. And then below that is the amount of per pupil funding that will be received within schools, and this is all school level funding. And it is a line that provides the highest levels of funding at 80% concentration of poverty or above, down to no additional dollars right at that 55%. So at 55%, you would receive the people, but no real additional dollars per student. And at 80%, how this is calculated is that every student in the school would have access to extended learning time, but it's calculated at a per pupil level only on those students who are free reduced price meals. And that's just a clarifying piece. And so
Say
Yes.
that again, Justin.
This has been confusing, and we worked a lot with the work group, so I will try to explain it. The formula funds the free reduced price meal students. But the amount of dollars at 80% that will fund would guarantee access to the services for 100% of students in that school to have the extended learning opportunities that were identified in policy area 4. So we run the formula one way, but it ensures the overall funding, and we do that because the calculation is more straightforward for us as staff to be able to run it in that direction.
And the rationale for that was that as the concentration of poverty rises, the learning environment impacts all the students, not just the low-income students.
Exactly right. Yeah. The bottom half of this page.
Excuse me, Senator Penske has a question.